Hello and welcome to the script. You are with Isaac Paul, and I am the host of the Tequila Tales. And we are going to have an interesting evening. First and foremost, want to apologize. We had a few technical difficulties that were all my fault. I'm still getting the hang of this, but trust and believe, man, that it's coming together, and I'm really, really excited about just what the future looks like. I have some bad news. I'm going to start off with a little bit of bad news. I was under the impression that Dr. Love was going to be joining us today, but as it turns out, he is hosting a retreat in Acapulco. We'll get into the specifics of that later, but just know that Dr. Love is going to be fielding all questions that anyone may potentially have as it relates to your love concerns. So if you all haven't done so already, I want to invite you to ask questions, submit any questions that you all may have to Dr. Love. It's got a pretty interesting backstory. Like I said, we'll kind of get into that. But what this is going to be is just like a brief recap. So even though this is going to be a brief recap, we're going to also have a more elaborate recap because we just had our March show of the Tequila Tales Live. And our topic was a fish out of water. And so, after the live shows, I always just think it's kind of fun to do like a recap of, some of the commentary, and there's always something very fascinating that's happening inside of these discussions. And in my personal opinion, and this may be bold to say, right? But if I had to put this particular last show in, a ranking system, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where it falls, but I would definitely put it in the top five shows of the last 11 years. And for a multitude of reasons, right? Like one of the main things was, I think, just the fact that, we're in Pisces, right? So for those of you all that don't know about astrology, like, and I'm not going to go very deep into it, but I said this in the past that, I'm someone that not only studies astrology, but, I understand how it can influence kind of the energy of any particular period. And so one thing that I've noticed just throughout the last 11 years of doing the show is that different shows carry different energy, right? Like not only determined upon, who's in the room, but then also determined upon like the time of the year, right? So like spring energy, Aries energy is always kind of fiery, it's new, it's spring energy. And you ever think about just like how you feel when spring begins? It always, it's always like out with the old, in with the new. It's like this new kind of exciting, kind of rambunctious, almost impulsive energy. And so you can feel that not only in the crowd, but then also in the commentary, and the back and forth. Well, for those of you all that follow astrology, what you'll know about Pisces, it's the last sign of the zodiac. And it's a very intuitive, it's a very emotional sign. It's a very almost psychic sign. And it's very selfless, right? And so when I designed this particular topic, I kind of kept that in mind. And so it was called a fish out of water. And so, we kind of use that as an analogy as it relates to love and relationship and all the ways that, an individual can feel like a fish out of water, whether that be through technology, whether that be through, defying gender norms. There's so much that's happening in this world today that is different from, times in the past, right? Decades past, I guess we can say. And so as we start to navigate this terrain, not only if you're dating, but even if you're in a relationship, right? Like how many times do you feel personally like a bit of a fish out of water? Almost like you kind of don't know what's happening right now, right? And if I'm being honest, I'm feeling that way progressively as the days age. I mean, it's especially when it comes to politics. And I'm not going to go on a tear with that, but just sometimes when you hear the rhetoric and when you see what's happening through what presidential candidates are saying and just the absurdity that we are seeing, this is not the world that I grew up in. These are not the adults that I was used to seeing when I was a kid and thinking that they had the answers or that, they had the truth or whatever, right? And so oftentimes, even just scrolling through social media, you can oftentimes feel like a bit of a fish out of water. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to kind of use that as a backdrop of a discussion. And, the comments, they never disappoint, and so we're going to kind of go through, what some of these comments are, because like I said, what I always appreciate about the crowd that we gather with the Tequila Tales is, even though right now the majority of our audience are Black Americans, the room is often diverse, right? So even amongst us, what I always love about these discussions is it shows how much we are not a monolith and how much diversity of thought can exist inside of a room of what would appear to be individuals that share many similarities as yours, And so with this particular discussion, what I loved about the commentary was that it just felt so incredibly authentic and vulnerable, and I felt like that this particular topic really tapped into it, and so, I always start the discussions off in a way where it's like, all right, we won't just jump right into, the heavy stuff. Let's begin somewhere light, and so I always pose the question, like an overarching question, just to kind of see where the crowd is going to take me before I begin to lead them down the path that I've, designated. And so with the first discussion, with the first area that the discussion had gone, I asked the question, can anyone think of the last time that they felt like a fish out of water? And so even as you're watching this right now, like, I want you all to share that with me, right? Because, I've always been a fan of what I would consider to be the butterflies, right? I feel like a lot of times we try to rush past that phase, past that getting to know something or getting to know someone phase. But me personally, that's always been the exciting point, right? Like the learning something new. I think because at my core, I'm a bit of an explorer or an adventurer. And so I like going into uncharted territories, but I can understand how that can make people feel a little, out of sorts, a bit like a fish out of water. So even as you watch these clips, what I would like to know from you all is, in what ways have you all felt like a fish out of water? Okay, so that's the first question that I want to ask you all that are watching virtually. But with that being said, I'm going to cue up this first clip.
Yeah, that's where I'll bring it to dating. Doing the dating apps, POF, Black People's Meet, that. Now, I do remember a time where you met some people, you guys kind of hit it off, passed numbers, and then you started that way. I felt the most uncomfortable going from creating a profile, having to list what I want, and actually having to think about that, because once you meet someone just randomly, you don't really list off A to Z. I want this, 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 that, and the third, right? It's just kind of, you just go off of that person's vibe. So I had to do that, pick out all the pictures that showed me in a cute light, you know what I mean? And then go from then having the inbox and then going, okay, this person, oh, well, that, here's a little Jeffrey Dahmer situation going on. Let me, you know what I'm saying? And just like, okay, and then finally meeting a person. And I feel like, well, I'll just say it, the first person I actually got to that point to do the meetup was younger than me. And I'm late 30s or whatever. So I'm going to say he was the early 30s, more like in the 20s, but in the mindset. But he was definitely the 28. I checked the ID. Okay. No, don't judge me. Don't judge me. Okay. Don't judge me. But I would say it was the fish out of water was like, okay, I don't even want to sound old when I say, like, I know I'm trying to sound hip, but I did try to seem a little like, what you said, what we did. Like, I caught myself. NBA YoungBoy said, what? yeah, I'm with it too. But I wasn't. I wasn't, but I feel like that was where I felt like maybe, because he was the young, he was younger, and it's like, okay, you move around a lot. You know what I mean? So I felt like a fish out of water, because here I am. I'm like, okay, well, I want to get the little spicy whatever, and I like the little attention, but you move around a lot, and you rap. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like just with that type of situation, being open to different demographics of ages and everything like that, getting back into the dating scene and knowing what that looks like. And then being like a woman, like I said, late 30s or whatever, the young boys are coming, but
Mm.
they NBA young boys. So, like, so I had to, I didn't know. I felt like, and I'm an awkward person with it when what? So, Instagram, I got you. I got you. You know what I'm saying? So, that's what my experience was.
Okay, that's good. So
So, I always like it when someone starts off in like a playful way, right? Because so much about these discussions can get heavy, and one of the things that I always like to share with individuals is that, you know, uh, kind of what the tequila tales is. So I gave a disclaimer this go round, and I let people know, this is not therapy. Okay. And so, what I mean by that is that I want people to understand that while the conversation can vacillate and it can be at times deep and thought provoking and poignant, and at other times it can be kind of playful and slapstick, I wanted to give people a little bit of freedom, to kind of move about and to have a good time, and to understand that there may be times that some adult things are going to get said. And so, I'm attempting to prevent people from having to clutch their pearls mid conversation, right? And so I'll give you all that heads up that there may be on occasion that you may hear a little bit of adult information, adult, language, and all tastefully. It's not ridiculous. So it's not gratuitous in the way that they'll speak, but I give people that heads up because I want people to be kind of in a relaxed state. So I'm just going to give you all that heads up because on occasion you may hear someone that makes a comment and it may make you want to kind of so for the most part it is kind of PG-13, but on occasion someone while expressing themselves will share authentically how they feel. But I felt that her comment was actually a great place to start because one of the areas that we were going to talk about was the dating scene, right? And for the majority of our crowd, I'll say our sweet spot in terms of our age, is about 35 to 55, right? So I mean, a pretty broad age grouping. We'll get some people that are older, we get some people that are younger as well, but and they cross the board, whether you are single, dating, in a relationship, married, widowed, we get the full gamut. But there are a lot of people that will attend these events because they are looking for someone, right? And so it's always the topic of re-entering the dating market after you've been out has always been one that's been kind of high on the totem pole, because I I feel like it's always a bit uncomfortable when you are having to go back into dating someone, especially depending upon how your last relationship ended. But so much has changed and so much is constantly changing that I know that it can really lead to some feelings of inadequacy, right? And just trying to feel your way out. So what I thought was kind of funny about the comment that she made was, she shared that she was in her kind of mid to upper 30s, but she was dating someone that was in their late 20s. And that, I always find that fun, right? Because you'll often see it the other way around, where like an older man is dating a younger woman. But it's always fun for me, at least, to hear the stories of more mature women sometimes dating younger men and what that experience may look like, right? And so, in the comments, right, if you've ever had something like this occur, this is a safe space. Even though it's the internet, it's a safe space. So, feel free to share your stories, right? Because I am monitoring the comments. And so I would like to know what your experiences are like. I'm going to cue up this next comment that I also thought was a really, really good way to kind of start the conversation, because she kind of bridged 2 points that had been made prior. But, again, one of the things that I really, really enjoy about the authenticity that comes from putting individuals in a room is, again, just like the diversity of thought, right? Like that, what you start to see once again is that we are not a monolith. And I cannot say that enough, because I think that we live in a day and age and we live in a world that wants to put you into a narrow corridor, right? Like even the algorithm, like, I talk about that a lot, but it's because I think that it's something that's so significant to speak about. Because I mean, when we think about modern media, it is our news feed, right? And whether or not you adhere to it or not, your news feed is trained to serve you up exactly what it is that you want on a silver platter, right? And so that was one of the discussions that we broached, as we went into the conversation is, in this day and age where everything is being custom built, right? Like whether it be on-demand television, AI being able to give you exactly what it is that you're looking for. Like, does this give us unrealistic expectations as it relates to finding a significant other, right? And how can we safeguard against that? But like I said, we'll touch on that in a moment. But here's the next comment.
I was going to get engaged. The guy was going to propose, and we actually initially met online. A really great guy, knew him for years. We had talked long distance for a long time. And then the opportunity came up for us to actually kind of get a little bit more serious. So we did. He came out. We really hit it off. We kept hitting it off, and then he moved out. And then we ended up, really having a relationship, and it got really serious. So I say all that to say, though, that you really don't know someone until you are really in each other's space. And I believe that, and we really feel like the world is our oyster, for relationships. And I think it is. But I mean, if you're settling just for the electronic connection, it's just not enough. And from the previous question, what I'm finding out from dating these last few years is that I really don't know men the way I thought I did. And men are amazing. I realized I had a little bit more negative thoughts about men than I wanted to admit at first, but I had to remove a lot of blocks, and to learn a lot more about myself, and to learn how to listen to men. The most simplest things, when men talk gently, I shouldn't have to. It doesn't take them yelling, before you have to listen to them. I believe that women have been trained to ignore men's emotions so much that we don't even listen to men's words. So I've learned a lot, and considering how much men deserve as far as attention, that attentiveness to who he is, listening to his words, watching his actions, you can't do that through technology. Only so much. It's so surface. And that's all I have to say.
So once again, such a good space to begin, and I know that sometimes with like a lot of our posts, right? Like you have to figure out how to get people's attention. We live in a very microwave society, a very instantaneous society where if you're not grabbing people's attention span off the rip, then it's almost like you'll absolutely lose them, And so one of the things that unfortunately we have come across is like where I have to find creative ways to get people's attention. And what you'll normally find are, as always with most media, that the comments, that are the most divisive, the ones that are the most petty, the ones that can get people arguing, those are the ones that are going to get the most traction, right? Because it leads to engagement. And so I'm going to touch on this again in a moment, because, something happened earlier today that was a first. right? It was a first. And I still don't 100% know how I feel about it. But, it is one of those things where you say to yourself, like, we've really found ourselves, or we've really gotten into a very weird space, not only as a society, but then also as a culture, But again, what I enjoy about these types of discussions is an individual not only having an opportunity to share their truth, but then also B, that it's something about being captive in this room and having to wait for it, right? Like having to wait for it, because there's so much that comes in life. And you hate to sound cliche, but there are certain doors that can only be unlocked with patience, and so we're in a day and age where it's like we want everything instantaneously, but in order for me to give it to you instantaneously, I have to truncate it. And there's some messages that just cannot be reduced, right? In order for you to get the fullness, in order for you to really be able to understand where a person is coming from, or how a person is feeling, you're going to have to dig a little. You're going to have to listen. There's going to have to be some exchange. There's going to have to be a back and forth. And I just feel like in today's world, we're not given enough liberty to do that. It's like, if I cannot grab your attention off the top, then I'm going to lose you. Our attention spans have been reduced. And so, with that particular comment, I think what I also appreciated about it, is that, it was just a lot of love in the room, right? It was a lot of love. And when she admitted to not knowing, what she learned, that she does not know Black men, I appreciated that transparency, and her willingness to be able to share that, but to still be able to share the love that I love Black men. Because again, this is something that you would think when you go to the comment section, you would think that does not exist, right? And so it's always dope to be able to see it happen in real time, in a way that unfortunately it doesn't happen virtually. But with that being said, we had another woman that shared her view.
I wanted to add on to the "you still young, baby," the young ladies comment about the dating apps, because I hadn't been dating for a while, and so of course the world is telling you the apps is where to go. So I went on the apps, and it was apparent to me I was a fish out of water, just starting the conversations, making the matches, and then once we get into conversations, like, oh, y'all do this, y'all used to this, no excitement, no really courting, no, like, I want to be courted. I want you to know, okay? Because I'm not gonna bring you anything less than my best. And so it was definitely apparent to me that, oh no, I'm a fish out of water here. I'm just an old fashioned type of gal, I guess, because that's not for me.
Right. So, I mean, how many of you all feel old fashioned? Okay. One of the questions that I posed to the group was, do you hold the belief that things were easier or better back in the day? Right. And so, if you're watching now, I'll ask you that, like, how do you feel? Do you think that, as it relates to just this entire plane that we're on right now, do you think that it was easier to find love, that it was easier to connect with someone, that it was easier to bond with someone than it was back in the day? For me, the jury is kind of still out for me, right? And a lot of people may not agree with this perspective, but I do believe that there are times where we have a tendency to romanticize the past, right? We can point back to a time when it appeared that things were easier, right? Because I do think that there is such a thing that exists, such as analysis paralysis. And for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like if you were a realtor. If you're a realtor and you're doing a good job, then you should be listening to your customers' preferences to find out, okay, what is it that they say that they're looking for? And can I show them? It's like if you watch HGTV, right? Like they're going to show someone about 3, maybe 4 houses. But if you're doing your job, I want to give you ultimately 3 options. Because if I give you all of the MLS system, if I give you all of Zillow, there's a point where there's so many options that it can kind of become a little overwhelming, right? And so then it's almost like the opposite happens. Whereas before you didn't have any options, and then that felt like that was tragic. Well, now what happens when you have too many options? What happens when, you know, all you're doing is swiping, right? And so now you've got 10 or 11 potential suitors. How do you make that decision? And so it's one of those things where it's like, I can understand some people desiring to go back to a simpler time. But I also think that we have to kind of caution it a little bit, because it's almost like, am I romanticizing the past? You know, am I desiring to go back to a point where maybe your voice wasn't what it once was, you know? And so, you know, I think that even as we kind of dig deeper into this space and, you know, we start to talk about like the gender wars and things that, you know, things of that nature, we are in a very, very fascinating space. And I don't think it's about right or wrong. But I do think it's all about perspective, right? I'm going to play this next clip because it sets up the following clips. Right now, I'm going to give you all a heads up because I may not have said this before, but I had an opportunity to do something special with this past show. I have been saying I'm a new father, and I've been saying for a while that I thought it would be cool if I had a show where my son was with me and I was co-hosting. I had my son with me and we were co-hosting together. So for the first half an hour, you know, while he was compliant, I had him on my chest in a carrier. But after he got to moving a little bit, you know, I passed him off. And so you'll still see that I have the carrier on. So if it looks like I'm 50 Cent and I got on a whole artillery thing, just know that that's because I had just passed my son off. But I just wanted to give you that heads up before I cue up this next clip. But it is important to the following clips.
You know, AI is about to change a lot of things up. And so we are about to have a theoretical, kind of almost philosophical question about something that is right here, right now, whether or not we realize it, right? And so I kind of want to know how y'all feel about it. But before we get there, I want to know, have you ever felt overwhelmed or consumed by pressure to be constantly available and responsive to your partner's messages and notifications, right? Like, think about that. That sometimes when it comes to technology, we got different communication patterns, and you have certain people that kind of feel like, and we've seen this on social media sometimes where they'll, you know, I saw a reel the other day that had me cracking up where it was a guy that was sleeping, and you know, his girl hit him up. And she was like, hey, babe, what you doing? And she waited a couple of minutes. Oh, well, you probably was some chick. And then, like, all you saw was these messages that came. Oh, okay. Well, then fine then. I hope you having a good life. I'm over here with another dude. And then it just kept going and kept going, like, where it was like, dude slept for, like, maybe a minute and a half during this reel. And you saw her whole emotional arc of frustration at the fact that he was unable to hit her back immediately, right? And so sometimes I feel like this technology gives all of us a false sense of like expectation of immediate, you know, response, right? So what happens? Have you ever been with someone where, you know, you kind of felt the pressure to live up to whatever their expectation was from a social media perspective? How did you deal with that? How did you deal with the fact that you was dealing with someone that kind of felt like, well, what was you doing? I might pull up, you know what I'm saying? Or the same way with the guys, right? Like you might have been like, you was out hanging with your girls. Do y'all remember when, I think it was it Martin Lawrence? Do y'all remember that when he was talking about how like, you know, you pull up, what was it, that you go out with your girlfriends and then all of a sudden you go out again, like, yeah, you know.
So that is the ultimate essence of what this next phase is going to be about, right? Is the feelings of sometimes. Do you ever feel an expectation to have immediate contact, right? So, like again, if you're watching this, either think about it or you know, I'm looking at the comments. So go ahead and just share your thoughts on that because I am kind of curious as to how you feel about that. Because with all of this technology, even though it does obviously do a lot of benefit in terms of allowing us the opportunity to be able to, you know, interact with one another, there does come this level of expectation that can occur when you're with someone. And so like when I was sharing about that particular reel that I had seen of the the gentleman that was sleeping and his phone was just getting blown up by his significant other, you know. And I know that there are times where stuff like that can be a byproduct of, you know, someone probably being in a relationship where they dealt with fidelity issues in the past. And so in that regard, that is understandable, right? But I was just curious to know, like, you know, as we talk about how technology influences our day-to-day interactions, how people felt as it relates to that expectation of immediacy. And so this was one of the comments that came shortly thereafter.
Several layers to it, right? What's that saying that for men, if they liked you or if they know they want you, they're going to do whatever they have to do to pay attention to you, give you that attention, keep in communication with you. I dated this guy. I was dating several guys at the time. And, you know, just had to get the little, oh my. Anyways, there was one super needy. So you're saying overwhelmed. I was extremely overwhelmed. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing tonight? What are you doing in 2 hours, right? And obviously it was a turnoff, so I wasn't communicating to him as much. I also was not as attracted to him either. So for that other guy I was dating who I was attracted to, who was giving me days between communication, now I'm saying to him, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Hey, what are you doing on Saturday? I think there's the level of attraction and how you feel about that person is going to dictate how you communicate with somebody with or without the technology, so.
So how y'all feel about that, right? Is she full of it? She kind of full of it a little bit, right? Like in a playful way, but she kind of full of it a little bit because, you know, I always think that that's funny because we've been saying this for years. We've been saying this for years that a person is only bothered if they don't find the suitor attractive. So how do you feel about that, right? Like, is it only harassment if the dude you find unattractive? Is that, you know what I mean? And you all get what I'm talking about. Like certain lines that you think are corny, if you find that person really attractive, then all of a sudden you see the humor in it, right? Then all of a sudden that corniness was cute. You know what I'm saying? But when they're not cute, they can have the best line on the planet and you're just not going. So that's also like a reoccurring thing that's always been kind of playful, where I recall one time in months past where I asked the question, like, does game still exist? Okay, so I want you to think about that for a moment. Like, does game still exist? Do you think that because I remember growing up, we used to really believe that. We used to believe like, oh man, he a Mac, or we used to believe, man, he got game. You know what I'm saying? But as you kind of navigate through the process, you start to realize like, it kind of don't matter what you're saying. Like sometimes hello is the strongest thing that you can say. And then at that point, you know, he or she determines whether or not that they like you. So like how much weight do you place on the physicality aspect of a relationship? Now, I always feel like women historically, now I could be wrong, but I feel like women historically have been better in this space. And what I mean by that is women's willingness to date men that they don't find physically attractive has been like, you'll see more of that than you'll see men dating a woman that he doesn't find attractive. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that is just a societal thing. I don't know if that's because, you know, essentially women are looking for security, you know, versus men looking for, you know, something physical. I try not to paint with a broad brush. And I do think that we are in a space where things are changing, but I have questioned that, especially even on the male side, right? Like, have you ever found a woman, you know, kind of not really your type, or you kind of thought that she was unattractive at first, but then after you got to know her, or maybe she had a great personality or a great sense of humor, she kind of won you over and now you find yourself attracted to her. Now, the comment section would lead you to believe that this is not something that's possible, right? I think it's a bit of a 50-50, right? Like I'm someone that believes that, and I think it's the same way with women, that while it may be hard to go the opposite way, right? It may be hard to say, I didn't find you attractive, but now I see these qualities and now all of a sudden I find myself drawn to you. While I do think that that's possible, I think that that's probably more rare than the opposite of I found you attractive until you opened up your mouth, right? And then all of a sudden things dry up, right? Like, I think that that's something that's probably a little bit more inside the vein of how the other elements can augment how you already feel about someone physically, right? How do you feel about that? Share your opinions in the comments. I'm curious to know about that, right? And do you think that games still exist? Now I do know that if a man is funny, humor goes a long way. And so, we've been seeing as a dude, we've been seeing that dudes that, may not have been very attractive, they can either get their money up or be hilarious and have an incredible personality, right? But those two things in some instances will ingratiate them to the opposite sex, right? But I oftentimes am curious to know if not only if men have felt this way, but then also if women have seen situations where a man wasn't that interested in someone until they got to know them, right? And because again, I don't like to believe that we're shallow, but the thought process that most people will have is that men are visual creatures, which I think we are. But again, as things are changing, I think that stuff starts to evolve. There was another comment. Now, this is where it might get a little adultish. So, bear with me.
Bother me. The only time it bothered me if there's just an instance where there's no trust, because then I'm blowing up your phone. Because I've been one of those females like, oh, well, I hope you enjoying that bitch then. Like, I've been there. I'm sorry. I done blew up the phone. I done called. That's probably why I say technology is bad, because I done found a way to get it to your social media, to find a number. You didn't create a password to your voicemail, so I've done it all. I've been bad. I've listened. I've lived. I've learned. I have failed and I have learned to be a better person, but I am telling you, there was a time in my life where because there was no trust, because I was hurt, and because I just had all that stuff that was so wrong with me, that I needed access to that man. If I could be in his skin, I would be. Y'all, what's that white man name that was eating people? Yeah, y'all call me him, Jeffrey Dahmer, because I was him. If I could eat you, I would, just so I know you ain't. I was like that though. But now I'm just, healthy and saved me. I don't. When I'm in a good and healthy relationship, I always try to give people grace, and I feel like we don't give each other grace no more because everything is so fast paced now and so instant access. So we don't give each other grace. We don't have understanding for the other person, give each other leeway. Because I'm busy. Who you calling? What you mean? I don't have this and I don't have that. You know what I do? If I go out my way to give you my time, and that free time that is not free time, and I'm losing sleep, you need to be thankful and grateful for that, because I'm thankful and grateful for your time. Because I could be blowing up your phone and showing up to your motherfucking house and calling your mama to see where you at. So be grateful that you have the patient version of me, and don't create that. You don't want that, don't give it to me, because I know I'd have received it from a man, so I had to stop. But here y'all go.
So you're going to show up at my job, huh? Oh, goodness gracious, man. Like I said, it has always been fascinating, man, the truths that people will share in a room full of strangers, And so that was one that really, really tickled me. And like I said, man, it was just so many moments. But I am going to share now what I consider to be one of my personal favorite comments that have ever been made at any of the shows in the last 11 years. I don't know 100% where it ranks, but it's without question. It's got to be, like I said, top 5. This is a top 5 comment to me for a multitude of reasons, but I'll play it and then, we'll go into the specifics of why in a moment.
I believed at a point in time gender roles did exist until life required me not to. I've been married for 9 years and my husband has a mess, so he's not able to work anymore. And as we all know, men are made to be the providers. They're made to go out and make the money. However, that changed for my family. My long life dream was he's about to be a truck driver. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was going to follow my dreams. However, that wasn't the case for me. And even until this day, we're getting better. But my husband is a stay-at-home dad. We have a 3-year-old son that we had after he was diagnosed, and he's the one that takes care of him most of the time. I'm the one that's outside the house, making the money, getting the second job. He's the one at home, folding the clothes, cooking dinner, changing the diapers, giving the baby a bath. And I'm the one that's on the computer working. Does it mean that it's not hard? No, it doesn't. My husband struggles with the gender roles as any man would, but it lets us know that it's possible. It's possible for a man to step into a nurturing role and to thrive in that space. It's possible for me as a Black woman to be able to not tear my man down, to be able to pour into him and to tell him, I value you. Thank you for making dinner today. Thank you for folding those clothes. This bathroom, you missed a little ring around the toilet, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And so I feel like that is the biggest thing with the gender roles. Yeah, it could be, I'm not taking out the trash. If my husband is in the house, hey, honey, can you take out the trash? But if he's not and he forgets it, I'm capable of taking out the trash. It doesn't make me any less of a woman. It doesn't make him any less of a man. It's about who you are as a person and what your life looks like. And we can get so stuck on who plate you supposed to make first, the man or the child. Me and my husband, like, these kids better eat first. Because that's how we operate. How everybody else operate is different. So try not to get so, if you do believe in the gender roles, right? That's okay. Believe in them, but know that there may come a time where life requires you to believe something different. And it may be a little uncomfortable at first. You may have to fight through it. I get it, ladies. I get it. Your man's supposed to be buying you everything. He's supposed to be taking you shopping. He's supposed to be taking you on those trips. But sometimes it's going to look different. So I took my husband on a shopping spree. I took him somewhere to go, okay, you done lost some weight, honey. You looking good. You need some new clothes. Like, let's get you feeling good. Let's get you looking good. Like the man over there said, let me pour into you. Let me date you. Let me show you how much I value you, because I know you need that. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, he appreciates it all. That's all.
Like, dead ass. I could have given a slow clap after that, you know. And afterwards, I had an opportunity to speak with her. And the woman that she was sitting next to was actually her mother-in-law. And, you know, if you looked at that clip, it was the woman that was sitting to her right, but to the left. And there's a point where she's talking. If you kind of key into her, you can see her husband's mother getting emotional. You know, she's actually like kind of like dabbing the tears from her eyes because she is absolutely in love with her daughter-in-law. Like, she told me, like, no, this is my daughter. And on a personal level, I mean, just everything about that comment I thought was beautiful, you know, and largely because it, again, when you go into the comment section, right? And just, you know, I don't have much time remaining, but, you know, for this next portion, you know, we'll call this stay out of the comments, right? Because sometimes you legitimately just have to stay the hell out of the comments, you know, and that is even our comment section at the Tequila Tales, because I kid you not, I went into the comments, and like I said, with that particular comment that the woman made at the show, you know, you think about what it means to be married and what it means when they say till death do us part, right? In sickness and in health. And so if you didn't catch it, what she shared was that her husband had MS, right? Multiple sclerosis, which is a very debilitating disease, and it prevents you from doing a lot of things, right? She even acknowledged the fact that it's not easy for him. You know, he is obviously an A-type, you know, he wants to be the breadwinner, but inside of the sanctity of their marriage, they figured out something that's working for them. And the reason that I thought that it was beautiful is because, you know, we're in this day and age where there's this assumption that Black men and Black women don't work together like that, right? That families don't figure it out, you know. You hop into the comment section everybody has this preconceived idea of what they think marriage is supposed to look like. You want to know the people that don't have that preconceived notion of what marriage is supposed to look like? Married people, right? Because once you actually are in a marriage, you understand that what y'all got is what y'all got. And who gives a damn what somebody else thinks? Who cares what someone else thinks? If you are more concerned about what someone else thinks about your marriage, then right there, you are on a road to destruction, and like I was sharing a moment ago, what I really appreciate about just the platform and even that particular night was people's willingness to be vulnerable, to be transparent, because I know it's not easy to share something like that, right? Because of the fact that she may have put herself in a space where she's going to get judged by countless other women, several of which are probably not with someone. But couldn't be me. She working 2 jobs. That kind of mentality. And the reality of it is it's like when you're in a relationship and you care about someone, sometimes you just do what absolutely has to be done. And that capacity to be selfless, that capacity to still recognize his value and that his value was beyond his capacity to earn a check, right? Like as we evolve, right? And as these gender roles evolve, because regardless of whether or not you choose to evolve, that's fine. That is your decision. But the arc of change always moves towards progress, right? So as much as we may fawn for an earlier time where things appeared to be simpler, right? Where you think things were better, because I can paint a picture where it wasn't so good for your grandmama, right? Who was seen as property, who did not have the same rights as her husband. But I'm not going to go down that road because I only have a few more moments left. But regardless of how much you desire the past, the reality of it is that we're constantly moving forward. And so the lesson becomes, well, how do we adapt? How do we adapt to this changing world? And how can you have a relationship in 2024 and beyond, right? And it's hard to do that when you refuse to update your software. The same way you can no longer use an iPhone 1 on this platform that we're using today, you can no longer come into a modern relationship with outdated ideals and beliefs, right? Unless you can find you another iPhone 1, and then maybe you all can march off into the prehistoric sunset together, But like I said, when I say stay out of the comments, there was a woman who made a comment and she literally like nothing but love, peace and love in the comment section. Here she goes. Really? A Black woman having to take on a second job and sit her man down is the best story to tell? I wish our standards were higher than the curb. I'm so sick of us celebrating struggle love. And so, my response was just, you listen to everything that she said and what you heard was struggle love. We're clearly very differently wired. And so the exchange, it was a bit of a back and forth. I won't even go into the tirade that she ultimately went on. That was more or less just about her disdain for Black men, which let me know on a level that she had been hurt in the past, right? But it got to a point where, she got to talking about, I love, I only date 65-year-old white guys that can do this, that, and the third. And I was just like, I don't even know why you're following this page, And so she said what she said. And I told her, I said, well, listen, you can do us both a favor and cut the umbilical cord and see your way out, And she said some more stuff and suggested that I block her. And for the first time ever, I said, okay, well, why not? And I blocked her, right? And so that's what I was going to share in the earlier stages that I kind of felt a little bad about, because everything about this platform is about free speech and open expression. And I don't have to agree with you. But at the same time, I think that as much as we can desire the engagement and as much as we can desire as much as we find ourselves, like I was saying a moment ago, free speech comes with the consequence. And I understand that, right? And unfortunately, the negative things is what drives engagement. But what I'm starting to realize is that all engagement is not good engagement, right? And sometimes there comes a point where you have to kind of stand on your laurels and you have to determine what do I want to represent, and what do I want to be filtered into my world and into something that I'm building, right? And, you know, like I said, I still feel kind of funny about that, right? I still feel a little funny about it because I've never blocked someone before, you know, and I might go back and release the block, but there was just a piece of me that was just like, if you heard that comment and what you decided to do was tear this woman down because of a decision that her and her husband made, you know, and like I said, it was a personal reason because I knew of this person, and, you know, she's a consistent troublemaker on the platform. And it just got to a point where it was like, you know what, I'm a wish you healing and wellness, and I'll make the tough decision that you are unable to make, right? Because I don't need you to be a part of this community hate watching. You know what I'm saying? Like why do we do that to ourselves, right? Like why do we engage in something that we know we're gonna hate just so that we can talk ish about it 24/7, you know? And again, and we wonder why we're depressed. And we wonder why we're always fighting these demons. But it's like, I don't, you know, again, when I say stay out of the comments, man, it's just, you know, we have really gotten into a new space where it feels like, and I know that this is social media. I know this is social media that's doing this, but I don't know if we realize that the things that's happening in this virtual world leaves residue in the real world, right? I don't think that there was a point where we could turn it off. It was just Twitter. We were just talking stuff, and then I turn it off and I go on about my real life. But the things that's happening online have real world consequences to them. It leaves residue, right? It makes you feel a certain way when you start interacting with the opposite sex. When you go out into the dating pool, you know, when you've been watching all of this nonsense and you're starting to believe that that is how men feel or that's how women feel, right? So it's not just social media. Sometimes we can get very dismissive about that. Sometimes we can look at the situation and we can be like, oh, that's just Facebook. No, it's not just Facebook, right? It literally has the capacity to control elections, you know. And now when we're talking about AI and this deep fake space that we're into, it's like, you guys, we really, really have to be cognizant about not only believing what it is that we see, but then also how we're protecting our minds and protecting our hearts, right? So, you know, with that being said, that is my time. You know, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I told you all, Dr. Love is coming on the next show, right? And it's going to be exciting. He's got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of, you know, advice. So if you all have any questions, if you all haven't done so already, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Or you can send him an email at drlove@thetequilatales.com. That's drlove@thetequilatales.com. But with that being said, this has been The Script. I want to thank you all for watching, and until the next time.